Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. The X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, and the Mutual Broadcast Network, and in Ontario, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming us at classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. Before we get to our first guest tonight, I'd just like to remind everyone that we have a petition on our websites and that we're kind of backing and promoting. It's called, the petition is to engage or have politicians enact Section 33, called the Notwithstanding Clause, that would give them authority over the Charter of Rights and Freedoms here in Canada, specifically in the province of Ontario, so that they could actually take action against the illegal homeless encampments that are popping up all over, and to help get rid of the criminality that comes along with them. So if you'd like to sign the petition, just go to www.galecrescent.ca. That's www.galecrescent.ca. My first guest tonight, X Zone Nation, is Tim Mulligan, and we're going to be talking to him, who's the author of 2 graphic novels, Witchland and Snitchland. Also the playwright for Witchland. That's a new play, Point Loma, that's heading off to New York in the spring of 2025. So joining me now from Palm Springs in California is Tim Mulligan. And Tim, welcome to the X Zone.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks for letting me be here. I'm really excited.
Oh, it's great having you with us, Tim. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Southern California, like you said, and I've been toiling away in management here for years. But just a couple of years ago, I think when COVID hit, I really I was quarantining. I decided to kind of sow some wild oats and cross off a few things off my bucket list,
right.
And that was to create some content. So I started writing a play of a scary place that I had in mind. So I wrote a play about my hometown, and since then, in the past 4 years, I've watched that play make the rounds. I've turned it into a graphic novel, and now I have a sequel that just came out, and another play, like you mentioned, going to New York. So, yeah, I live in Southern California, and I work by day, and I write by night and by weekend.
What are your 2 books about?
Yeah, well, I guess it started with I'm a big theater goer, and I like immersive theater that's kind of scary. I'm a big fan of the horror genre. So, one thing I've noticed in live plays is a lack of creepy / scary plays. So I thought I would add something to that missing void. So I decided to write about what I know, which is my hometown. And so I'm from a town in eastern Washington State. It's called Richland, Washington, and it's also its claim to fame, and I think what makes it unique, besides the beautiful landscape, is that it's the home of the Hanford Nuclear Reactor, which was created in the late 40s as part of the Manhattan Project, and it that in itself has a whole long, really strange, bizarre history. But it was created unwittingly of the folks who lived there or even worked there to create plutonium that was used to create the bombs that were used in World War II. In fact, the bomb that was dropped in Japan was built actually in Richland at that plant. So it's had a long, troubled history of illness and people getting sick there, and there's been big lawsuits. And so I decided I would write a play about what it's like to be from a place like that, and kind of tie it to the legacy and the history of the folks who have sued and even succumbed to illness there over the years. And so that's what it's about. I call it Witchland because also, I really wanted to write a story about my growing up there, and besides being centered around growing up next to a nuclear cleanup, well, it was an active nuclear site, now it's a cleanup site, but I also had a witch. As many small towns have characters and lore that whether it be a haunted house or a ghost or whatever, or all the above. I was terrorized by all through high school by a house and a woman that I was told a witch lived in. So,
oh boy.
So I have plenty of stories about that witch. So I thought I'd write a story about a fun kind of modern day story about a couple based on my partner and I and our daughter, and being dropped into modern day Richland as being really fish out of water, as being a not very diverse, or being a very diverse couple in a not a very diverse place, and have one of them work out at that nuclear plant and the family just starts getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and you're not sure if it's because of the exposure to the, some of the 56 million gallons of radiation buried in tanks there, or is it because the witch across the street put a curse on them? So it's a scary, fun, interactive play that I then thought would be great to convert to graphic novel, since I love graphic novels.
I understand that you also wrote or are selling Perfect 10 cookbooks.
Yeah, so I guess that's part of my COVID story. So, what I really wanted to do during that COVID time was two things. One was to write my first play, which was Witchland, and I wrote that in 2020.
Right.
And then the second year in 2021, while Witchland was kind of gestating and getting, making the rounds to get staged, I spent a year, of that time working on cookbooks, since I also am a home cook, and I've been working, I used to work in restaurants a lot. So I put it all together, and I wrote a cookbook that actually did pretty well. And so I actually put a sequel out a couple of years ago. So there's two. One's called A Perfect 10, and the next one's called A Perfect 10 Party Edition. So so since COVID, I've written a couple and published a couple cookbooks, and then now a series of graphic novels as well.
Geez, if you wanted to go on the limb, you could actually write a cookbook about witches and how they cook as well.
Well, I'd like to tie it all together somehow. There's so many stories to be told about this town and hometown. That's why I jumped into Snitchland, and I have a third book that comes out in February called Twitchland. I wrote a trilogy about this kind of haunted, scary town, and that's what I've been kind of focusing on. I'll probably go back to the cookbooks one of these days. Yeah. But now I'm really involved in this world of Witchland, I call it.
So how haunted is Witchland? And how strange is it?
Well, I don't know. It's no secret. I think what's interesting about Richland is that people who live in Richland love Richland. My family and friends live there. It's a great place to grow up. What people who live there don't talk about, though, is the fact that what's kind of the dangerousness of Hanford. So they quit. The government stopped the plutonium creation, I think, back in '86, which is when I graduated high school. And ever since then, it's been a multi-billion-dollar cleanup site. And what they're trying to clean up is these. And it's no secret. You can just go online and read about Hanford. But there's 56 million gallons of waste, radioactive, highly toxic waste, is buried in tanks in the ground, and those tanks are leaking. So they're trying to figure out what to do with it and to stop it before it hits the Columbia River. And so. So that in itself is I guess you ask how scary it is. There's environmental concern there. Obviously, it employs a ton of people, and the government's trying to get it fixed. But there's kind of two sides of the scariness. There's the whole history. There's a big lawsuit called the Downwinders, and those are folks who got exposed to radiation back in the early '50s when the government released some gas into the air, and the wind took it and it hit through all these farmlands, and thousands of people got really sick and many died. There's that legacy story. I tell that in Witchland. But then there's the modern day, the folks working out there today, and I know many of them who are who work out there in the cleanup site, in the hazmat suits, and they get tested for radiation, daily, weekly, whatever. And people to this day get sick out there. And that's kind of what I wrote about in this new book, Snitchland. In fact, Snitchland is more of a kind of a whistleblower cautionary tale of what happened. There's many tales of folks who have tried to make safety concerns about that place and allegedly have been exposed to some strange repercussions for doing so.
What was it like living next to a nuclear power station that is now defunct, but it's still, I would imagine, quite a hazardous area?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting thing. And I went to high school was Hanford High School, which is right outside of the reactor.
Right.
I worked at the reactor in high school. I think we all did. I couldn't tell you what I did. None of us knew what was going on up there, at least with my high school friends. They never educated, the kids there on the history of Hanford. So what it was like is that, it was a pretty idyllic existence. It's on a beautiful river. It's in the desert. It's pretty. But the folks there just didn't talk about the issues. Now that, you take a few steps back and you are removed from it and read about it, you're like, how come we didn't talk about it during that time? And to this day, I think the folks just try to, they enjoy it because it's a good cost of living and it's pretty. And yeah, it's dangerous, but it employs a bunch of people and it pays well to be there. So I think folks there just really like it because they can live well and just hopefully not get sick. But you asked what it was like. I think anyone who like me who was born and raised there, I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who didn't have someone who died, from something related to Hanford or got very sick or suspects that the reason this family had sickness or was arthritis or thyroid cancer, whatever it was. We call it the cancer out there.
Right.
It was just kind of part of living there, and that's the weird part, I think.
Is the NRC still active out there doing the testing and also monitoring what's going on?
Oh, it's the Department of Energy. The DOE has there's many contracts and contractors out there, but it's the government is just has put billions into the cleanup site.
Right.
And I'm not an expert on all the latest updates, but you can read about it. And, there's questions of, do they ship it somewhere else? Do they go to Nevada? Do they freeze it? Do they put it into glass blocks? They made a big factory, a vitrification process to turn them into blocks. So I think that the government is still trying to figure out how to contain it and what to do with it, because the tanks that they are in are falling apart and they're leaking. So that's part of the problem. In fact, Witchland is based on besides the whole history of Hanford, there was an occurrence back in 2017 where this old tunnel collapsed at the big B reactor where there was a dangerous reactor.
All right, why don't we talk about that when we come back from this very short break?
Yeah, I'll tell you all about that, sure.
All right, Tim, thanks very much for joining us tonight. And X Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest after the show, not now, www.witchlandplay.com. That's www.witchlandplay.com. And Tim Mulligan and I will be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, please sign our petition at www.galecrescent.ca. We'll be back. Don't go away.
How many of you out there have heard of alternative engines? Engines that can run on anything from alcohol to garbage or water. Or carburetors that can get hundreds of miles to the gallon. Or electric or magnetic engines that can practically run forever. You don't know about them because if they were to come into use, they'd put the oil companies out of business. The concept of the internal combustion engine has been obsolete for over 50 years. But because of the oil cartels and corrupt government regulation, we and the rest of the world have been forced to use gasoline for over 100 years. Big business is primarily responsible for destroying the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the food we eat. They have no care for the world they destroy, only for the money they make in the process. How many oil spills can we endure? Millions and millions of gallons of oil are now destroying the ocean and the many forms of life it supports. Among these is plankton, which supplies 60 to 90% of the Earth's oxygen. It supports the entire marine ecosystem, which forms the basis of our planet's food supply. But the plankton is dying. I thought, well, let's go to some remote state or country, anywhere on Earth. But in doing a little research, I realized that these people broker toxic waste all over the world. They basically control the legislation, and in fact, they control the law. The law says no company can be fined over $25,000 a day. If a company is making $10 million a day by dumping lethal toxic waste into the ocean, it's only good business to continue doing this. They influence the media so that they can control our minds. They've made it a crime to speak out for ourselves, and if we do so, we're called conspiracy nuts and we're laughed at. We're angry because we're all being chemically and genetically damaged, and we don't even realize it. Unfortunately, this will affect our children. We go to work each day, and right under our noses we see our car and the car in front of us spewing noxious and poisonous gases that are all accumulative poisons. These poisons kill us slowly, even when we see no effect. How many of us would have believed if we were told 20 years ago that on a certain day we wouldn't be able to see 50 feet in front of us? That we wouldn't be able to take a deep breath because the air would be a mass of poisonous gas? That we wouldn't be able to drink out of our faucets, that we'd have to buy water out of bottles? The most common and God-given rights have been taken away from us. Unfortunately, the reality of our lives is so grim nobody wants to hear it. Now I've been asked what we can do. I think we need a responsible body of people that can actually represent us rather than big business. This body of people must not allow the introduction of anything into our environment that is not absolutely biodegradable or able to be chemically neutralized upon production. And finally, as long as there's profit to be made from the polluting of our Earth, companies and individuals will continue to do what they want. We have to force these companies to operate safely and responsibly, and with all our best interest in mind, so that when they don't, we can take back our resources and our hearts and our minds and do what's right.
Welcome back, everyone. We played, it's called On Deadly Ground. Steven Seagal was in that movie, and that was Steven who was giving that speech in that movie, and it made a lot of sense. So my guest this hour is Tim Mulligan, and Tim lives in Southern California now. But as a child, he used to live beside a nuclear power plant. And were there a lot of people that you knew, Tim, who actually suffered from a direct cause of this nuclear plant that was there?
I mean, we know people. My parents worked out there. My dad, shipped the fuel and the toxic, radioactive fuel, and so I think that we all know people that we think were affected. Mm-hmm. I mean, or were part of this giant lawsuit called the Downwinders, which was several thousand people who sued for because of reaction that led to thyroid cancer. So I think that you ask a lot of people. I think there's folks that were there, like I said, in the early days, like in the 50s, who were part of that, and it just compounded over the years. And then there's folks today who are out there in the cleanup site who get upticks for radiation, and if you just kind of read some of the current stories of folks out there in the cleanup now who continue to get sick and suffer the consequences. So do I know many people? Yes. I think we all do, folks who live there. But again, it's not something that gets readily talked about on the streets of Richland.
And understandably so, if that is one of the major employers in the area, you certainly don't want to bite the hand that feeds, Uh,
Right.
you were talking briefly about a witch, and I have to ask you, tell me about this witch, because, I played Witchy Woman by the Eagles coming into this segment.
I heard that.
And witches have always intrigued me. We've had many witches here on the show, and as of today, I'm still not turned into a frog. If they were witches, they would have turned me into a frog, or else they just felt sorry for me and decided to let me live my life as a human. Any witchy stories that you can share with us about this witch?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this this was in my high school years in Richland, and
Right.
or I call it Witchland. But I was told, I don't know who told me, but there's, the lore was there was this house that for some reason there's a small group of us in high school that got pretty obsessed with it, and it was a house. It was one of the government houses that they built in the 40s for Hanford.
Oh, yeah.
And and so they call it, they're numbered house or lettered houses, A houses, B houses, C houses.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's in one of those, like a B house, which is a smaller one. And it was just a dark house. The lights were usually out, and the place was pretty unkempt. And every now and then you'd see a glimpse of her, like in a window. She was an older lady, kind of frightening, to us.
Right.
But then she also, the interesting kind of the witchy part about it all was that made you wonder what really was going on. Was that she had this pile of sticks that she would that were always in a strange kind of triangular, like a little teepee, on her walkway up to her house. And they're little pile of sticks, and they're always in like a sitting up position, almost like if you're building a campfire or something. And they were always there. And the kind of the lore was that if you if you kick over the sticks or you knock it over and then you come back, it wasn't lore. We'd see this happen many times. The sticks would reappear. So somehow she was getting out there and reassembling them pretty quickly, and we never saw her do it ever. But the other thought, the rumor was that if you took one of these sticks, then you were cursed. And so, of course, being in high school, there were several situations where you dare someone to go up and take a stick or take a stick and bring it back to a party and scare people, and so it was just a strange situation. Years later, as I started kind of thinking about writing about Richland and the nuclear plant, and I just had that witch in my mind, I thought it'd make a really interesting story. I actually did a bunch of research on her, the actual woman, and I'm not going to say her name, but she did grow up there, and she went, her parents worked out at Hanford. So I tried to tie it all together into one story that, maybe. And so I kind of made up a backstory there, but maybe there was a situation that involved Hanford. The research on this woman was that she had gone away somewhere overseas, like after high school, and come back, pretty touched with mental illness. And so, it's just a sad story. But she lived in that house for many, many years by herself, and she had her scary sticks. And every now and then we'd see her around town, and it was just a creepy situation for us that haunted me to this day. And that was 40 years ago. So so that I wouldn't say that like there were things we were cursed or things were flew across the room, but it was just this old lady in this house in this scary town and these sticks that really, really haunted us.
How many sticks did you end up taking?
I don't think I ever took one, but I did see people take the stick. I mean, there's I mean, it goes further than that. There are stories that I know of friends who did take a stick, and then, I mean, and some people, kind of bad things happen to. So whether that's because of the sticks or not, I don't know, but that's kind of the lore within my friend group. So, it meant a lot to us, and that's why, so much so that I wrote a play about it years later.
How hard was it for you to write Witchland?
I'd never written creatively before. I'd seen a million plays, and so I really wanted to. I thought the idea of getting people together in a theater and sharing a really scary, almost like you go into a scary movie, is so fun, and it's very popular right now. People love it. I love it. But I thought having it be live would be great. So that was my goal, was to get people in a theater and tell an interesting story about Richland, because I think there are folks even from Washington who don't know anything about Hanford. So that's interesting to me. So there's a little educational component, but then make it be super scary with this witch, and I tried to make it somewhat immersive. So my goal was to set out just to make this play where you're nervous the whole time, and you didn't know if there were people in the audience who were going to, scare you, and the witches. And so I had never written a play. I just kind of, researched the formatting of a play script and storyboarded it out. I had a very specific story in mind of this couple and their teenage daughter, kind of based on my family, who pick up and leave. I did a similar thing going from San Diego to Seattle a few years ago for a job, and I thought, well, I could have taken you guys to my hometown, and that kind of sparked the idea of, let's put this family in modern day Richland across from this witch, and also let's have one of the dads be working out at the site where this tunnel did collapse back in 2017, and many of the workers sued for, say that they were radiated, and I have friends who worked at that place. So it's really based on a real tunnel collapse that happened and exposed a bunch of more of these hidden tank cars full of toxic waste that just happened, in 2017. So once I started writing, I couldn't stop, and it kind of came out of me, and it ended in a place that I thought was really good. Then I shopped it around to some theaters, and then next thing you know, it was getting a full run for a month in San Diego, and this year it went to New York this past spring. It played for a month in Palm Springs, and it's finally going to make it to Seattle next year. So that's doing well. And then I just thought it was such an interesting story, and I love graphic novels. I like comic books. So I worked with the graphic designer and decided to turn it into a series of graphic novels, just because the plays, if you can see a play, great. But if not, it's much more accessible. You can just order this from Amazon, and everyone can read the story that way and see it in this kind of beautiful graphic depiction of, what I wrote.
What was it like the first time you saw your play?
Well, they did a great job. In San Diego, they really got it. It's a theater company, and they really leaned into the scares. And so, they turned the theater into like a nuclear plant, which is great. So when you walk in, there's people in hazmat suits, and they had kind of radiation detectors, and you had to sign waivers like you're going on a tour of a nuclear reactor. So they leaned into the whole experience. As you walked in, it started, and that was really fun. And then people were just on edge. And so I think that, if you nail the scares and then also nail the nuclear situation and the tunnel that collapses and do that in a fun way, then it just makes it a fun experience. And I just love seeing the screaming in the audience and people coming out of there saying, I can't believe that's based on a real place. So that's been the reaction is, what a weird, interesting story. And also that's the most fun I've had. A lot of people don't even like plays, but this is more like going out to a haunted house for adults is how I look at it. And it's really fun to see folks having a great time.
Tim, stand by. We've got to take a break. In Exo Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, Tim Mulligan, visit witchlandplay.com. We'll both be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Then there's no use hiding out under your bed. But don't get depressed and run up to the bottle. The earth's trying to tell us it's time to remodel. Earth changes, less greed will be nifty and house about peace. For a big polar shifty, a whole lot more love and a big dose of patience. Coming alive to the joys of creation. Earth changes, and so can we. For all of the change
Welcome back, everyone. That's Michael Horn's Earth Changes, and Michael is the North American representative for the Billy Meyer Society and the Billy Meyer Group out of Switzerland. And, of course, anyone who has listened to the show over the past 34 years knows that Michael has been on and off regularly, and it's always great to have him on the show, but I'm really, really proud of him for that great song that he wrote, and that's Earth Changes. Tim Mulligan is our special guest. We're talking about Tim's two plays, his book, cooking books. Wow, where do you go from here, Tim?
Well, right now I'm focusing on just telling more tales about Witchland. I think that, the Snitchland book just came out a few weeks ago, and it's a much different story than Witchland. It has the same characters, but it's a ghost story, and it I did a ton of research on all the whistleblowers and folks who. There's actually a whole society of whistleblowers from Hanford who have tried to make complaints about safety concerns or being exposed or whatever, and you hear these awful stories of what might happen to them. So this book is more about that. This one's more like a whistleblower cautionary tale about coming forward and trying to right some wrongs. But I also have it led by kind of ghosts of folks who perished at Hanford. So that's keeping me busy. And then the third one, Witchland, will come out in February. And that's more of a more of a, I'd say, fanciful. I did witches in Witchland. I have ghosts in Snitchland and Witchland. It's kind of a commentary on the drug crisis with fentanyl and also tying it to nuclear waste. And it's kind of my own version of vampires / drug addicts running amok in a town next to a nuclear reactor. So those are keeping me busy. I think there's plenty of stories to tell about this place.
Tell me about the whistleblowers. Are there many of them? Are they all seeking the same? Are they still trying to get the government to take care of the same problems? And how successful have they been?
Yeah, I think I've done a bunch of research. There's been several books written actually recently about just the state of whistleblowing, and there's always in any book you read recently about whistleblowers, there seems to always be a whole section about Hanford. So, as far as from what I can tell, there's hundreds of reported cases of whistleblowing, and I'm sure that those vary from small complaints to larger scale complaints. I know of a few of them that I've talked to, and they kind of vary in what they're complaining about. As to what they're asking for, I don't know. I think they're probably all different. Some probably just some were probably injured and brought forth, and there's tales of folks who have been denied workers' compensation and medical bills, and they can't work anymore, to folks who, if this complaint had been listened to, maybe some accident wouldn't have happened. So I think they run the gamut. And I've been in HR for a long time, so I kind of know how whistleblowers, how retaliation claims can go and work. And so I try to put that all to a fictional tale of, with that, tying it to that tunnel collapse, and what if it could have been stopped and it hadn't, and someone lost their life in it. So, it's a fictional kind of telling of a whistleblower story that I kind of made up for this family, but it's based on a lot of research and some stuff that I've been exposed to, and just in my, since I was born with Richland in my background.
So it's a fictional story about the truth.
Yeah, about people seeking the truth, and it's a fictional. One example of a fictional story where there's in real life there's hundreds of whistleblowers. So it's just one fictional kind of continuation of my Witchland story, but with a whistleblower angle.
What do the people of Richland think about your books? What's the feedback you get?
That's a great question. I don't know. I have a large network of friends and family that have had fun with it. I think at first there might be a little confusion, like what are you trying to do with us? But there's no secret of what's happened with the history of Hanford or what's happening right now. I'm just writing kind of a fun, supernatural tale of that place. So I try to talk lovingly about the place, but not sugarcoat the environmental dangers that are there, So I think people have liked it. And there's some folks that I know who didn't like it. And it's not just about Hanford. I also kind of, it's a societal criticism there, about, it's kind of lack of diversity. And so in terms of, whether it be sexual orientation or color, and, I'm part of a same-sex couple, and we have our black children, and so, and we're white. And so, it's just, I just know that's not the place for us. And so,
Right.
so you kind of get, there's folks who may not like exposing some of the nuclear, situations, but also there's also kind of a critique of, what it's like to live there if you are different.
You mentioned fentanyl. Is that an issue in Richland?
Yeah, it is. I think it is probably many, many small towns.
It is.
They've had a bunch of issues in the past couple of years, though. That's kind of that I researched for this next book. But yeah, Richland, like many small towns, even in Washington State, have had some real bad situations with large amounts of kind of drugs going through, including fentanyl. So I wrote my own story about that, of course, tying it to again the strange scenario that
Sure.
people live in there.
President Trump says that when he returns to the White House, fentanyl is in his target zone. Do you think fentanyl has gone way too far, that it can't be reversed, or do you think that it can be reversed and that the problem can be solved?
I don't know. It's a great question. I don't know if I'm the right person for that, but I would hope that, I try to be pretty optimistic, and I think
Sure.
that it's good to hear President Trump say that. And I think that, if we could have, it's such an epidemic, and we know so many people who've, whether it be fentanyl or other, highly addictive drugs, fentanyl being the widespread one right now. If the government could put some, money and resources into stopping that, it'd be great, because I think towns like Richland and others, of course, that's just one, have really, really obviously, suffered. So, yeah.
When it comes to whistleblowers, the majority of people that we talk about on the show or deal with UFOs, ghosts, hauntings, things that go bump in the night, and so on. And recently, with the congressional hearings and the so-called whistleblowers that have been brought to Congress, people have lost a lot of faith in the credibility of whistleblowers based on the hearings. And how would you, as an author and a person who's done research on the topic, how would you say that this whistleblower has much more this credibility than that whistleblower? What's the criteria, in your opinion, of being a whistleblower?
That's interesting. I think, in the workplace, someone brings a complaint forward and then suffers any sort of retribution, especially here in the U.S., there's been new laws, even as of this year, where there's much more protection for those folks to protect them from retaliation. So I don't know. I think that are there whistleblowers who are, stretching the truth and not being honest, perhaps. But I think when it comes to like Richland and what the cases that I researched, there's all sorts of tales of everything from being followed. I mean, I have friends who, I used to be a lawyer and practiced law there actually for a little while.
Holy
I actually
cow.
went back to Richland as an adult
Right.
and for a couple of years. And I had a few folks who felt that because of things that they knew out at Hanford, this was, 20-something years ago even, that their phones are being tapped. They thought their house was getting broken into. You read tales of folks who the company is trying to make them feel like they're crazy. And if they're bringing, complaints forward, they have to go see a psychiatrist, So
Wow.
I've seen all sorts of extremities in these tales. And so is each whistleblower honest? Or, I'd hope so, but you never know. I mean, but I think it's how they're treated that is that can be the problem,
I think that why most people have lost credibility why whistleblowers have lost credibility in the eyes of the public is because the Congress was asking questions that the viewers wanted to hear the answers to, and the whistleblower would say, well, I can't divulge that information. We have to do it in a skiff.
Yeah.
And, well, what's the sense of bringing these people to Congress to go in front of the congressmen and congress ladies on national TV if they're not going to talk?
I'm not sure. I just know that putting yourself in the shoes of the whistleblower and what, the especially in the public eye like that,
Right.
and the backlash that you could receive, you're really putting yourself out there, and sometimes they want to hold back because either they've been told to by lawyers, or they're afraid if they really go all the way and tell the truth, they might really face retribution. So I don't know. I think this, again, every case is different.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky area, that's for sure.
Tim, I want you to stand by. This is our final segment. When we come back, we'll talk more about Tim's plays, his cookbook. My gosh, he's even been a lawyer. Tom, where do you get time for Tom and your family, buddy? Tom, we'll be right back. Tim, I'm sorry. Why did I call you Tom? I have no idea.
That's okay.
Tim, stand by. We'll be back on the other side of the short break as the XO continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell. And don't forget, after this segment, we do a bit of station work, and then it's back to hour number 2 of the XO with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center here in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like, send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, XZone Radio TV. I'll be back. Don't go away.
Earth changes, you're cracking me up. I'm starting to hear about all sorts of weird stuff. It's the bombs, it's the comets, it's the dark days upon us. So say the folks who all quote Nostradamus. Earth changes.
Let the joyous news be spread, the wicked old witch at last is dead.
All right, that was just for Tim and the people of Richland. First of all, Tim, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. I wish you continued success. And when your third book comes out, don't be a stranger. Come on back and tell us more about it. And we'll certainly love to hear about it. Now, you and I were talking briefly during that break about UFOs in Richland. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, it's funny because I thought you'd be interested in that. I've been doing some research on this for a future iteration of the graphic novel series. Hanford, there's a long history of UFO sightings, many cities, obviously, as you know, but in Richland and Hanford, by the nuclear reactor, I know that there's the most sightings in the whole state of Washington are at Hanford, or in the Tri-Cities. So much so, there's been several sightings, a couple recently that made a lot of news. But over the years, everyone I know claims they have seen UFOs there. And I was doing a little research, and this goes back to when Hanford was created to create plutonium and making the nuclear bombs back in the late 40s. Mm-hmm. There were some really widely reported UFO sightings, and then there's some sort of a government division that was secretly set up also at Hanford.
Really?
But that's what I'm researching now, and the idea and what it seems to be is some sort of a idea for it was built for UFO like retraction for UFOs that crash or land. So there's a whole bunch of writings out there about this division of the government that was set up at Hanford back in the late 40s to really focus on UFOs. And so I'm working on it now, and then it'll be a really fun next iteration of life at the nuclear reactor is the UFO component.
Have you yourself had a UFO experience, or do you know anyone who's had a UFO experience in Hanford?
Oh yeah, I've been talking about it because I'm starting to draft out what the next story could look like, and so I interview people that I know who work out there, and I have friends, family, and people who work at Hanford they all swear they've seen UFOs. I think there's many people who've said that over the years. But these are folks that I'd heard about this even growing up there, that, Hanford had a ton of UFO sightings. So it's just kind of part of living out there that it wasn't a surprise to hear one day, hey, we're 100% sure we saw a UFO last night, because you heard of that quite a bit at Hanford. So yes, I've had many conversations with folks who swear they've seen it, they've described them. I'm trying to kind of write a story about it now, but oh yeah, it's been going on there for years.
In your opinion, does the government of the United States and other governments of the world know of the ET presence, and if so, why suppress it?
That I don't know, but in my opinion, that from what I know about Hanford, that at least several decades ago, I don't know what the modern state is, but back it was so prevalent and widely believed to be true that a division was set up. So, you know, what does that mean? Is there information that's being suppressed, that's not being held? Probably. I just don't know how much there is there. I found some really interesting reports in like the late 40s and they're like in kind of government journals and letters that went out about the sightings that had happened. And so it's been going on there. Is it tied to the creation of Hanford, which was in the late 40s? I'm not sure. But there definitely is a history there, and it happens to be at a place with a nuclear reactor. So who knows?
How far is Hanford from Roswell, where the Manhattan Project was actually?
Well, that's that's New Mexico. I think that would take it's a ways. You know, we're on the West Coast, but it's a long drive. It's not a long flight. A couple,
Sure.
Several hours.
So why do you think that the government would use a nuclear reactor in Hanford that is so far from New Mexico, where the Manhattan Project was?
You know, they talk about it. If you even in Oppenheimer, there's a whole section about creating Hanford with General Leslie Groves, and who found the spot in Richland. There was a village called Hanford, and they just I think they were attracted by the fact that it's all desert there, and it's
right.
Eastern Washington State is completely desert, and they just thought it'd be a good place in the middle of nowhere that they could set up these factories. And so, and it's interesting now that it was just announced at the end of October, so it's a few weeks ago, that it's all over the news, that Amazon has said they're going to put up millions to start building new nuclear facilities at Hanford and start producing nuclear energy again. So I don't know. I mean, there's something about the topography, the weather, the desert. I'm not sure,
Well, maybe they felt that if anything went wrong, there'd be less of a casualty score than if they put it somewhere else where it was more populated.
Well, there's already a cleanup process going on, so who knows?
But
I think that that's another fun thing about these stories, and I think that for your show, I know you like kind of some of the supernatural. I think that there's so many stories about Hanford, about not just the UFOs, but that's part of it, but also just animals all the animals who live out there who are radioactive and act crazy and glow. There's glowing green tumbleweeds that fly around at night. I mean, it's just there's so many crazy things about that place that I could be writing graphic novels for the next 20 years probably.
Son of a gun. It almost sounds like the beginning of The Simpsons, where Homer puts the nuclear rod in the back of his shirt by mistake, and there's a three-eyed fish. That is also.
I'll have to look at that one. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, just like that.
Besides the nuclear reactor, what would you say is the number one industry within Hanford or Richland? I get them mixed up. What is the actual name of the city again?
Well, it's called the Tri-Cities. There's three cities: Richland, Kennewick, and Pasco. Richland, within Richland, is the Hanford Nuclear Reactor. So it's Hanford is the name of the reactor,
right?
And but it's within the city of Richland. But I think it's because of where it's located in the desert on the river. It's become quite a place for wine tasting, for pickleball, for boating, for golfing, for tennis. It's the weather's great for kind of sports all year long, and that's popular. I think the other big industry there, besides the cleanup, I mean, the Hanford cleanup site is where most people work, but but and they also make a lot of potatoes there, oritas there. So they have or lamb Wesson. So it's potatoes and wine and nuclear cleanup.
Wow.
is the living there.
How did you go from law into doing books on nuclear reactors and cooking?
I sought out to do law because I wanted to help. I wanted to be in the employment side of things, and so I became a lawyer, and I practiced law back in Richland for a couple of years, and then I decided to move away from Richland, and I moved to Seattle and to California. But so I've been doing law, but more from the human resources side,
right.
And I represent and I help employees, and I've made a career out of that. The writing, you asked about the writing, that all came out, like I said, during COVID, but also, I have kids, and I became an empty nester in the last couple of years, and just freed up all this time, and COVID just while I'm locked at home, quarantining, just kind of spurred me to use that time differently and to really focus on creative works, and that's what I've been doing. And now I just can't seem to stop. So,
what is the population of Richland?
Oh gosh, good question. I mean, I don't know what it is now. I know when I was there, each town, it wasn't very big, like 35,000 people each. But I have to look up. I'm not sure. It's grown a lot because of the cleanup.
Sure.
So, I'm not sure what the latest.
And in your opinion, how did COVID affect that area? COVID affected municipalities and cities around the United States and Canada and around the world in different ways. How did COVID affect your town?
By the way, the population's 64,000. I was wrong. I don't know. I haven't been back there physically in a couple of years because I now live in Southern California. I do have friends and family up there,
right.
But as far as I know, the nuclear cleanup, which employs most of the town, just continued. I think that the folks out there who work out there are already masked up and hazmated up, and so I think it just was just another level of security and safety that they had to go through. But I don't think it didn't affect the cleanup project at all.
We've got about 2.5 minutes left. What would you like to share with the X-Zone Nation tonight? What would be your message to them about writing, or if they have the idea to write a book or write a play? How would you, as a successful author, screenwriter, what advice could you give them?
Yeah, I think that I don't stop once you start, and try to get to the end. I thought I would never finish, and I just made myself do it and do it and do it and create and end up with a product. Now that if that product goes anywhere, great. Mine have now, and so I would say I don't think you're ever too old to start something new. I mean, I started this in my mid-50s, and so this is a whole new kind of world for me. Is this creative side. And lean into the weird. Like I think people are really responding to this strange place and my stories about witches and ghosts and the occult. And, I have a new play coming out about a haunted house based on a real place that my friends live. That's going to New York this year, called Point Loma. So you kind of write. I like to write based on truth and write what I know, and then kind of embellish it with my own, creativity.
Where can I?
So Witchland came out last year. Snitchland just came out. And they're in beautiful graphic novel form with this awesome artist out of Mexico City named Pyrank. And yeah, if you haven't read graphic novels or you want to try something new based on a real place, I think it's definitely worth checking out.
And where are your books and graphic novels available?
Anywhere online. I mean, Amazon. Just look up Tim Mulligan, and you'll find Witchland and Snitchland in hardback, paperback, Kindle. You can also get it at Target online, Barnes & Noble online. Probably your local bookstores, but most people just go to Amazon. And then my website, witchlandplay.com, tells the whole story of everything. I call it the world of Witchland. You'll learn about the backstory. If there's a play coming up, you'll see tickets. All the graphic novel information is there, and kind of history of Richland and Hanford is there as well. So witchlandplay.com is a good place to go for, and there's links to the books there as well too.
Tim, time has come when we must say so long for tonight. I look forward to the next time you join us here telling us about your new book. But until then, thank you very much for joining us. Continued success, and Wow. All I can say is thanks for the very interesting hour that you shared with us.
It was really fun. Thank you.
You take care of yourself now, Tim. And Exonation.
Oh, you too. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye, sir. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, Tim Mulligan, visit www.witchlandplay.com. And like Tim said, his books and graphic novels are available on all online bookstores, including Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. I'll be back on the other side of the short break as the X-Zone continues with hour number 2, right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and in Ontario, on our good friends at Classic 1220 CFAJ, streaming at classic1220.ca. Don't go away.